GM everyone. Becca's Corella here today. Happy Tuesday. We're going to be talking about governance. We're going to talk about voting, Purple DAO. We got a quick 50-minute show or so for you here. We got a lot to get into, and we're going to get started right after this. GM Chris, how are you?
Good, man. That was a pretty epic opening.
Gotta go
Super
back
Mario
to the
action.
Mario. Yeah. So we've got
good to chat with you, man.
always great to have you here. You've been on multiple times. C. Corella, Purple PFP. You are serving as a delegate for these two nouns, right? Is that still right?
That's
True?
right. Correct. Yes.
Awesome. I got kind of a fun show. I want to kind of talk about, you got your delegate statement up. Maybe let's start with that. Because last time you were on, you were working on this and you ended up finishing it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it totally was a direct result of us kind of workshopping it live on the stream. And then, I spent a little bit of time just cleaning it up. So my delegate statement is up.
I will notice heavily, I see a lot of noun 40 in this, kind of the on-chain societies, the noun society, and highlighting. I love how you highlight Purple and Builder DAO, and little nouns and Rs.
Yeah, totally. For one, I'm just generally inspired by Noun 40, and I think we have similar worldviews, and certainly similar worldviews are on-chain societies or DAOs. That's I was lucky enough to meet him at ETH Denver, and hear a lot of it straight from his mouth, and we jammed over that and where Purple fits in, and the relationship between Purple and nouns, and the similarities and the differences, and all of that stuff. Purple has sort of day one been about public goods. I don't think nouns was really day one. It wasn't like the day one statement that it was a public goods thing, but we kind of had our first communications. We talked a lot about public goods funding and Purple and the Farcaster ecosystem. Yeah, I will just say that, I'm I don't say this in a vanity type way, but it's like I was the first one to launch. Yeah, I'm a co-founder of Purple, so there are three of us. I launched the contracts. I was the first one to use Builder DAO. Now it's .build, and so therefore, as a technicality, have been running it the longest. But then also joined the next couple of other ones that came out, including the Park, Builder DAO itself, Art House is another one. So just generally involved in the Builder DAO ecosystem, and I think partially as a combination of those things have, besides for being like an advocate for Builder DAO and these sort of NAMish DAOs, have been sort of a point of contact for a lot of people who want to start their own NAMish DAO or their own Builder DAO. And so I've talked to lots of people, some who are very NAMish and get it and just have some tactical questions, some who just come from the NFT world and have a lot of misconceptions of how this would kind of work. There are people that I coach away from doing the NAMish model because it's not really going to meet their goals. And so that's just sort of, an extension of my delegate statement. A lot of this is just about I'm knee deep in nouns DAOs. You learn something every day in each one of them. I'm a relatively recent delegate for nouns, and so there's another deeper level you go into nouns when you actually get to vote and make hard decisions, and sometimes vote against your friends and those kinds of things.
Yeah. You're putting it lightly there. There certainly are different layers. Let me start with this, because I think this is something I really appreciate about you is you tweeted a couple days ago about being thoughtful with your vote with reason. It sometimes takes extra time to be thoughtful about it. And so I went back and I looked at your voting record here, and it looks like you're basically every prop, you're voting with reason. Is that
Yeah, I always
right?
vote with reason. Yeah, always.
That's a lot of work.
One or two of them is maybe not as super thoughtful. Um, but honest, such an incredible short. I can't wait to mint that was true, but then I've tried to like get a little bit more thoughtful, with my last couple of ones. It was a lot of work. I think like I think you're part of nouns and you get to vote, and part of it is play and part of it is work. And it's something to be taken pretty seriously. And when I was delegated the nouns, I took that very seriously, and I was very thankful, and maybe even more seriously than the people who delegated it to me. But yeah, it's like nouns is like a very functional DAO with a very large treasury, and having a vote in it, I think, is like a very serious thing. And so I think it's worth putting in the work. I also think like uh, vote with reason is really interesting, and I love talking about purple and vote with reason, but just in general, it's like once the Discord disbanded, um, and the conversation kind of went all over the place, which I love, and maybe that's something we can get into. The To me, the real conversation happens on the vote. And so if you're just voting no on something and you're not giving the reason for why you're voting no, it's like the rest of the community cannot learn from that. Yeah, it's like we can't come to like these social norms because we don't know why yeses or nos are being voted on. And so for me, yeah, it's just sort of the source of truth. Is like a vote happens, you give your reason, whatever, as short as you want it to be. It could just be novels or something a little bit more uh, informative, so people know like how you're voting, why you're voting, how you think this DAO should work. So it's almost like
How does
actually
it work?
shocking to me that so many people don't vote with reason. Wait, what's asking that again?
Oh, I was going to shift to purple because I actually genuinely don't know. But
Oh,
what
cool.
is vote with reason? How does that play out on purple? I don't think I've ever looked at a purple
Okay.
voting reason.
Oh yeah, cool. So obviously, like um, there's lots of different ways. There are lots of different interfaces to vote on any of these Namish DAOs, including Nouns itself. There's House of Nouns, there's Alpha Caster, there's Nouns.wtf. There's Agora, like all of this stuff. That all works with Purple too, and so in some ways very similar. And so just like how does this work? It's like you place your vote, and there's a text box, and you get to write what you want, and then you press vote, and you pay the gas fees, and you vote, and then your reason, look here it is, right? Like this is a very funny purple one you're looking at, but the reason is then put on chain, and then actually like in the main nouns interface. It's not easy to find, but on these other tools like House of Nouns or AlphaCaster, the vote with reason is like front and center. So that's just sort of the mechanics, right? And so yeah, I vote. Yeah. So I know I tend to vote on like AlphaCaster for purple, and then I type in my reason, and I get to see everyone else's reasons as well. And the reason why I wanted to mention purple is because like we overwhelmingly vote with reason. In fact, if you could pull up alphacaster.xyz, yeah, you can see this here. But
Hold on.
anyway, if you pull up,
Before I
yeah,
do that, I want to just point out that almost every transaction here is from an ENS. There's like no
yeah, I
OX
think,
transactions. That seems quite a bit different than with nouns.
yeah. So this is like one of the differences between and many other builder DAOs and Nouns itself is that we have Farcaster as our sort of our common mission and our common space, and so no one's really a non. There are people who have an EMS and they're a non on Farcaster, but it's like you have this. It always ties back to this identity, and it ties back to this identity of like this community that's very much like Twitter. So we're kind of sharing our thoughts and our lives. It sort of always ties back to this real person that is trying to build a following on Farcaster, and so I think one, it like minimizes the bad behavior that might happen, because like you can always trace it back to the person. Now there's lots of games you could play. You could create a fake Farcaster account, which actually is not that easy, but you could do that. and you could like infiltrate Purple DAO and do nefarious things. It's not like impossible to do that, but it just so happens that we're at the stage of Farcaster where everyone is doing everything in they're in everyone's best interest, and so one we have like very little um, like trolling, although we did get trolled a little bit this week. So here we're looking at if you that top card you can swipe that type card which says co-sponsored New York City meetup, which is our next sort of prop. And then if you maybe the slide
just
is not
doesn't
working
work
for you
in my browser.
Oh, okay. Well, here you can click
and
on
these populate right in your Farcaster when someone votes, so you don't have to go to Etherscan. It can just show up for you right in your native app.
It shows up on AlphaCaster here currently. The next step, which they're working on, is to like post this stuff automatically for you into Farcaster. So you're just looking at a feed of Vote with Reason. I want to see like if you just keep scrolling down. I see none of these actually link to the proposal, which is what I wanted to show. You could check out House of Nouns is the same, but all I really want to show is like a lot of people in Purple vote with Reason. Now, like a lot more than any of the other DAOs I've seen. And like my first thought was like, oh, cool, I vote with Reason, and so now it's like I'm leading by example, and so everyone else votes with Reason. That was like my very first response to this, and maybe there's some truth to that or not. But then I just realized like, oh, we're like just a highly verbose community that our water cooler is Farcaster. We're all constantly saying stuff all of the time to each other, and so it just makes sense that when you vote with Reason, and everyone sees it, and then Farcaster users who aren't even in Purple come and they can see the Reason, and so it's just kind of interesting. We're like a DAO full of people kind of using words to communicate their ideas and expectations and feelings, and all that stuff happens every day on Farcaster, and so it just has extended into our vote, which is now it's like everyone just votes with Reason, which also then it just totally, when the vote happens, you just totally know why people voted, like what the issue is, right? Like a lot of times in nouns, because there's actually little vote with Reason. In fact, I find that now fewer people vote with Reason when they vote no than when they vote yes. So you don't really even know why those no votes happen. But on Purple, because people tend to vote with Reason, I mean, it's not everyone, but there's a lot of people, you like know exactly what people are. Yeah, you can see Purple is here. Yeah, nouns is a great one to look at. If you click on the one I wanted to show you was developer in residence. And so our developer in residence, 4 down right there. This was a contentious Purple vote. You can see 34-13 against. It was kind of like 50-50 until the very last moment. But you can just scroll and you just see a lot of people have provided their reasons, and you can see like even long multi-paragraph reasons here. And so when this vote had closed, it was like there was no question how people felt. In fact, it's interesting because a lot of the people voted yes with reservation, and so those reservations were also like it's different than just like, oh, that person voted yes, they support it, and the person like kind of conditionally voted yes and then used the vote with Reason to talk about like what they hope to see. And then in this case, since that was a developer in residence, he took all of those votes with Reasons and incorporated that into his feedback to get started. And even said in our Discord like, hey, I saw all the votes. Thank you for all of the comments. I'm gonna like incorporate all of that in my updates. And so, anyways, just a lot about the power of vote with Reason as a way to like communicate what the DAO is actually thinking. Because in a decentralized world, it's otherwise like pretty hard to know why something was voted yes or no. And then I'll just go one step further, which is like because Purple is relatively new, Nouns has a history of many proposals, right? And so you can sort of know what's definitely going to pass, what might pass, what won't pass. But with Purple only has a couple of dozen votes, it's like we're still at the stage of trying to define our social norms. And so if someone comes to me and says like, hey, can I do a live stream show about Farcaster? It's like, I don't know what the community, like, I don't know what the DAO will respond because we just don't have enough history built up yet. But when you start to read through the vote of reasons, you start to understand like what's important to people.
Definitely very interesting about Purple. I also noticed your quorum, that vote was, you doubled the quorum, which pretty unusual in nouns. But yeah, also interesting how all your voters have ENS. and you've got this native communication layer with AlphaCaster, and it's like you're only in purple if you're really interested in Farcaster. So it's like a super self-selected group that are quite advanced, interested in governance. Yeah, definitely, we're going to keep track of that. We're going to have you on regularly. Keep talking
Yeah,
about
cool.
purple.
There's something
Um,
too. It's like I see you have these other tweets pulled up, and and this like well, I'll just talk to them as a whole, but like purple just has this unfair advantage where not unfair advantage, but it's like why does purple work as a nounish DAO? And one of it's like we have a very shared mission, a clear mission and understanding. And these tweets that you have up on the screen speak to that a little bit in general. My thoughts here, but like purple has that. It's like we all love Farcaster. We all want to make Farcaster better. You know, we are an ecosystem DAO around the protocol we all love and use daily. And so that like and naturally has a community angle to it. Um, Lots of people have different opinions on what it means to make this protocol better or to fund people doing cool stuff on the protocol. Like we all have different opinions on that, but we all are there for the same reason, which is like let's make Farcaster better and more fun and a bigger thing. And then the second part of that is that we just have this flywheel of users constantly being introduced to purple because they, you know, every week new people join Farcaster. Some of them go deep down that rabbit hole. There's a lot of like developer energy in Farcaster, and a lot of people just uncompensated building cool hack projects on top of the Farcaster protocol. So you when you go deep down that rabbit hole, you can like feel that, and then you wonder how you get involved. And then either you're a developer and you throw up your first hack project, or you don't have time, or you're not, and then you discover purple and you realize there's this like other way to get involved in this. And so just as a long story short, like as an ecosystem DAO, it's like kind of perfect for these Namish DAOs because we have a central thing that we're all trying to coordinate around.
Totally. And I had who did I have on Digital Oil a couple, maybe a month ago,
Awesome.
and he said, there's two types of nouners. There's like nouners who they own the noun and that's fun, and then there's nouners who realize, hey, they can actually get paid to build this ecosystem that they love to make it better. So I think you've got a unique combination there with your population of purple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a third type of Nammer, which those who think they're going to get paid. That's like when I run into those people, it's like, oh no. Like you can if you have a great idea and you have a new thing, but like if you bought your noun because you want to somehow profit off of this thing, maybe this wasn't the right organization for you. Again, not that it's impossible to do that; it's quite possible, but it's just like not the mindset that a lot of people go into it on.
Hey, can we take a quick detour into the realm of Jerry Seinfeld?
I love Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah, this is funny.
So one thing I actually didn't talk to you about this before, but I'd love to. I'm building a prop in little nouns, and I'd love to get your feedback. Are you still a little nouns voter?
I have a single little noun left, and a few people have delegated to me. So yeah.
Okay, so think of it as like a live pitch. I don't think you have any idea what I'm pitching, but you've got at least a couple little noun votes. I'm going to need those votes. So can I try and explain this to you here in 30 seconds?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so it's a season of live stream content produced by myself and Index Card, who's shout out. He's actually in the audience here. And so what we're doing is we've mapped out the season finale of our season is we're going to go on chain with the prop at nouns. That's the season finale. And so right now we're kind of in between the pilot and the mid-season kind of cliffhanger. But we're going to go on chain and we're going to ask little nouns for probably 12 to 15 ETH-ish for us to produce this whole season. The finale of which is us live streaming the entire process of developing a prop, campaigning for it, taking feedback, putting it on chain, campaigning for it, and then the finale is going to be a live show during the last couple hours of the nouns vote.
Yeah, I think it's pretty great. I think it's interesting that you're going through little nouns because it's like something that maybe nouns can also fund because one of the things is it's actually good for both of them. But one of the things with actually all of these DAOs, I can come back and talk about Purple again too. But it's like when you're in the DAO and you're like, you've been there for a while and you know how things work. You kind of know how all of this works, or you're learning it along the way. When you're a little on the outside, or you're brand new to the DAO, or like you just have a great idea and you want to make a proposal, it's very unclear, like where you even start, let alone where you end up. So I think it's like super valuable process here to just show people how you go from idea to pitching on chain and having votes happen. I'm in. I'm a voter.
Are you a yes?
Yeah, I'm a yes.
Awesome. And do you know off the top of your head how many votes you have?
I think I have 9 or 10.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll put you down for 9 to 10 yes votes. This is shaping up quite nicely.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's like really interesting. We just in Purple, we were just looking at this prop where it's like a developer in residence, and actually, it's not the right name for the prop because this is not like someone who's going to build Purple stuff. That's what I kind of think of as like a developer in residence. Builder DAO has a developer in residence who like helps maintain the Builder DAO, the nouns.build repo. This is more like a hacker in residence. We're just funding someone 3 months to build cool shit on Farcaster, and it's pretty. The yes with reservations were all kind of like this is cool, like it is way too undefined, but one of the things I loved about it is that he sort of didn't know anything about how nouns worked or how these DAOs work. Passionate about Farcaster, has some ideas of things he wants to build, has some public infra he wants to build. In a lot of ways, was a really good fit, and then had to go through that process of figuring out how to get yes votes. And it often starts with people coming to me, say, "Hey, can we talk?" And I like to talk to everyone, and then they're just sort of asking me like, "Will Purple do this?" And it's like it's almost like the first misconception is like, I will support this or I will not support this, but there are 100 of us, and like kind of what I say doesn't even really matter, And it's pretty foreign to people who are not involved in DAOs, or even people who are involved in like more centralized DAOs. Like, I'm in Friends with Benefits. I know the 3 people who have to get excited about a thing to make it happen. In Purple or any of these DAOs, it's just not that, right? It's like I'm one of 100 votes, and it's a little bit more than 100 votes, but I'm one of 100 people. I think this is pretty cool. I can tell you that I think the sentiment of the community is open to this or not open to this, or I can tell you about like maybe the developing conversations happening. But that's step one. Step one is not really ask Chris. I mean, it can be because I can sort of coach you through the rest of the process. But it's just like, if you think I'm going to say yes, and that means it's going to happen, that's just not how this stuff works, right? And so anyway, so Alex had our developer in residence. He went through the whole stage. He met with me, and then I sent him kind of towards our Charmverse and Discord, and then he like put some stuff up there, and then he got a bunch of feedback, and then he realized he needed more feedback, so he went to Farcaster, and he got feedback from there, and then he learned that like, oh, he actually can't put up a prop. He needs someone to put up a prop, and he had like a really strong champion inside of Purple who was like really into it, and so that guy put the prop up for him, and then the Purple, I think like in the nouns context, the next thing you do is like you go on the Twitter Spaces and you jump in the private Discords and you join the community calls and you like really try to socialize your idea. Like that, Purple's just not that mature yet, so just using Discord and Telegram, he just kind of rallied and let people know what he was doing and that he was serious, and then ultimately made it through. And so one of the things I was voting for the whole proposal, and like just wanting him to have this position and wanting Purple to try a hacker in residence and see what could come of it. But I think in my vote with reason, the first thing I said was like, Alex made it through this process. It's very unclear what this process is. And he just did it, he made he took all the feedback, revised the proposal. And it's like, he did all the hard work it takes even just to get a good prop on chain. Which one, it's not very clear. And two, like a lot of people just don't do that work, right? They didn't properly socialize it before it goes on chain. So just to come back to your show, to have a show where people can kind of watch and understand what the whole process is, I think would be super valuable.
Yeah, totally. And you're kind of a part of it now, because we've we've kind of already had a lot of feedback, and there are definitely folks, voters who, come on and they're like, "Hey, Evan, I know you. I know what you're capable of. I know index card. Like, I just trust you. I'm a yes." And then there are
Right,
other
right.
people who say, I really like this, but you should make, clips, and you should, do this kind of advertising and do this kind of character arc. And
Yeah, totally.
I don't know, like, that it's possible to have a cohesive kind of framework for that as a voter.
Like a playbook or something. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, how do you think of this? Like, what do you think in terms of how would we get your vote? Then you would feel good about it. Would you tend to be kind of in the middle on one side and the other?
Yeah, I think it's like so when you make this vote, there's like a lot of things in play, and one it's like you do have to like know and trust the team, right? And so like you have that from me, and so that like pushes you over to like a yes vote, and then you have to think like, is this a good use of money or bad use of money? Obviously, I didn't see your budget number, but in general, this is like a good use of money. So I would push it further. Does this like contribute to the public conversation or proliferate the meme or provide a public good? You're potentially in all of those categories. So that sort of pushes me over, right? But I think a big part is like I know who you are, I know what you're trying to do, and I support that? Am I, know that you're not gonna make me regret my vote? And I say that just because then on the noun side, I'm often presented with proposals where I just don't know anything about what's being proposed. And it's a lot of work to just try to figure out like what is this? Who are these people? What are their success metrics? Um, and I will like kind of like wait for it to play out, and then I start to get a little bit nervous when the voting gets closer to close, like 2 or 3 days away from close, and it's like, oh, I still don't really know enough about this. Um, on the wallet as a service one, I might like put out a tweet, and then that team actually responded to my tweet, and that sort of was really helpful. But then, there's one right now that is I'm pulling up myself is this nouns web stock now New York City thing, which Little Blooms is a part of, and so I know him. Blooms is a part of it, so I know him, so that's good. But that's like I don't know anything about this web stock organization. And they talk about like the three things that the successful one they did in Miami and the successful one they did in Denver or something. But like I wasn't there, and it totally is like one of those things where it's like one thing Kickstarter nailed was having these intro videos where you got a feel for like who the people are and what they're trying to achieve and how passionate they may be about this thing. And I was just like looking at this proposal being like, oh man, a sizzle reel of the last couple of events would go so far in making me feel comfortable that people actually attend this thing and that it's, like a fun event that we want to be associated with. And so there's just so anyway, there's just no kind of I think I think when you write a proposal, maybe you have to think that like no one knows who you are and or what you're trying to do. And also no one wants to read like a 10-page document. And so it's actually a challenge to like communicate all of those things, who you are, what you're doing, what your past success was. And then in a sort of internet sized readable, proposal, it's pretty challenging. And I do think like videos, um, when they exist in an announced prop, I think they go a long way. But I do think it's like a lot of what a lot of these props miss is just like, man, just give me the 5 minute in the 5 minute internet video. I can probably not. I don't have to read this proposal. I can like double check a proposal, of course, but like give it to me on the bite sides, especially as I'm then trying to collect my thoughts and vote with reason, and it's like just make it easy for me to vote to like understand what's even happening. And I know that's what like everyone's trying to do, but there's just like a lot of context I feel like I'm missing. And then it's like, okay, do I have to go Google this web stock thing? And then I have to like go check Twitter and see what people have said about it. And it's like just I just want to vote. It's like a lot of work to say yes to that.
Totally, totally. Index, do you know Chris? Chris, do you know Index card?
Like through the internet.
We met briefly in Miami. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah, you were with Motivate Me outside of at the dopamine
Oh,
event.
cool.
But I
That
just
was
have to
super fun for
comment
me.
like, yeah, whatever the advice that you just rattled off in like these last few minutes might be some of the best advice I've ever heard someone give on like prop writing and prop building. And I definitely agree with your thoughts on having to write a vote with a reason. When I acquired my noun and I had to start voting, it shifted my entire perspective, for better or worse, on nouns and the entire ecosystem. And then I also, on a couple props, wrote like a rather lengthy, intense reason. And I spent pretty much like the entire day writing and rewriting this reason. And it just kind of gives you like another perspective that you don't have otherwise.
It's so easy to vote yes or no without really giving it that deep thought, right? But as soon as you have to like just explain your actions, it forces you to think more deeply about it. I write, and then GPT chat rewrites and rewrites and rewrites, and then I pull together like the 5 sentences from the 5 versions that I really like. But even just, it's like, a lot of times I can get that first version out on my phone. I'm like, early morning thoughts, I'm having coffee, I'll bang it out, and then it's like, okay, I would never share this on the internet, so now let me spend, however long it takes, and maybe I don't even get to it the next day to like, let me refine these thoughts and really say what I'm trying to say,
Yeah, it's not only sharing on the internet, it's putting it on the
Unchained
chain.
forever.
So
Yeah,
it's like a notch up from that, maybe multiple notches up.
for sure.
Well, I looked you up, Chris. You got 9 little noun votes. So I put you down in our
9.
yes column. And then I gave you the outline treatment. Normally we have index card do that, but yours was fairly easy to give you a nice black outline.
Amazing.
Can we talk about GPT, Chris?
Sure.
I'd love to hear how you use it, and maybe we show it off or something. I was having it write a delegate statement for me.
Yeah, I'll say there's like, look, there's 2 ways. I have a project I'm working on that I'm not making good progress on, but there's 2 ways I use it every single day. There's one which is like, I'm a product designer. I work on Charmverse, and there's just like a lot of copy isn't like my thing. Some UX UI designers like copy is their thing. It's not necessarily mine. We don't have a copywriter, and there's a lot of like micro copy. It's like when you click this button and this error comes up. Like I can write it like like a computer programmer error. Like you don't have token required, and then I can throw that micro copy through ChatGPT and just get lots of versions of that one sentence, and then can find the one that I want to use in the app. So like I use it every day as like a work tool. Today I did it where I wound up having like 6 error messages. There weren't error messages, but 6 mobiles on what you were about to do. And I wrote it 6 different ways, and I was able to like put all 6 of those sentences into ChatGPT and said, rewrite these so that they're like consistent in the same tone of voice with the the same level of authority. And so that's like the copywriting is just like one core use case for me. I then for longer form stuff, largely it is often around like this vote with reason. I'll write a couple of versions and then drop them into ChatGPT and have it rewrite it, and then kind of use it to help edit. Like I never really like just take the ChatGPT version, but it's like, oh, that sentence is better than the one I used. The third sentence is better than the one I used. So that's kind of more copywriting. The thing that I started working on was trying to feed it every nouns prop. I actually want to like feed it everything I could about nouns and then be able to query it. And then I think you could wind up doing things like you write a prop and then say, rewrite this in the style of a successful prop. And I could probably do that. I think I could say like, what happened then? Give me the results on prop 3, and you get that. And then I'm interested in like maybe having it break down voters for me, like who are the 10 key voters needed to pass a prop. I think it could probably do that stuff. Now, in my very first naive experiment, it's like I fed in the first 5 props, which it was a lot of cut and paste. I put in the first 5 props. I started querying it. It like kind of knew everything about all 5 props. It was pretty cool, very promising. I then fed it a blog post about nouns, and then besides for props, I just wanted to know about nouns, and then and that kind of worked. And I could like ask it questions. Then I could ask it like general. This is like I don't remember which blog post it was. It was like a pretty broad overview, and so I could ask it questions about like the auction mechanic, and it was like starting to tell me more about nouns. And then I asked it about prop 1, and it like totally forgot that it had props at all in it. And so that was like so it was like very promising, but then failed at the point of like, okay, ChatGPT actually forgets things. And so I've since found other ways to inject data into ChatGPT, and then they have this plugin system, and I'm pretty excited to get in the beta eventually. But yeah, I think one of my first kind of real DAO use cases will just be to feed it all of the Namish information I can, and then have recall. And recall's like a big thing for me. Like I also want to feed it lots of tweets. I'm often like trying to find a tweet that 40 said or a tweet that 4156 said, and it's like just so fucking hard to find that stuff. But I could imagine being like, show me everything 40 said about public goods, and then having all those tweets come up. So that's kind of some of the use cases that I'm interested in with regards to nouns, and then with regards to like my day job, and then we definitely go full on futurist if you want to go there. Maybe it's like another show.
Well, can you help me with
cool.
my voter persona? So yeah, I'm doing. I'm setting up a delegate persona. It's basically a combination of Andrew Carnegie, noted robber baron, but also effective philanthropist, and then Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. Just very positive pro-social tips, how to make friendships, how to be responsible, etc. And then I needed a noun head, and it occurred to me that I could throw in the Carnegie Deli, and then I became a sandwich head. So here's Carnegie Nounsworth. This is my nouns voter persona, and now I need sort of the text for my Agora statement, for my tweets.
Yeah. So I've been like how much experience you have with prompt engineering, but you can totally start off by saying, pretend like you're in ChatGPT, and you say, pretend you are whatever that name was, nouns burger guy, and you're one part Andrew. I mean, you're pretty close, right? So what you want to do is you actually want to tell it to pretend to be this person, rather than tell it what you're doing, right? So pretend you're Carnegie Nounsworth. Yeah, this is pretty good. I would kill the nouns DAO part because it won't know what that is. So I just say like a voter, and then if you put these three things, all right, that works.
All right, let's see what it gets for me here. Because what I'm looking for is I've got Yatong coming on the stream on Friday. I'm going to set up a voter profile. So I want to kind of do what you did last week.
You then probably like the key here would be like, I think you have to play around to get like perfect thing, but this is pretty close. So you do this and then feed it the outline of maybe like come up with the outline yourself, right? Like you can look at mine, I have like an outline, and then just say like fill out this outline, and then it will then, because this is pretty good what it's doing for sure, but it has no kind of notion of like what a DAO delegate is or what a delegate profile should be or like what issues are important. And so you can actually like feed it that next and say like, okay, here's the outline of my delegate profile, fill it in. And then it will kind of do that. And then you can say like, actually about public goods, I feel this way. And then it will like write that part in this tone of voice. Really what you're looking for is like this tone. Yeah. I think this is it, man. It's just a very iterative process of trying to feed it things. And you can give it a check, like, what do you know about nouns-style? And it actually was like, I don't know if you're on ChatGPT 3.5 or something. It was like right before, I think like the first one or two nouns were out. And so like it knows a little bit about nouns-style, but like part like what the world knew at noun one. That's what ChatGPT knows about nouns. But yeah, you can like just probe it, like you're debugging something, like, what do you know about nouns? And it will tell you.
How do you
this is pretty good in the copy.
How do you feed it information? I've never done that.
So you can like say, read this, and then cut and paste something.
So what's an example that I should do here for I go to Nouns Agora.
If you went to Nouns Agora and like,
What if I just
whatever,
snipe
just take,
yours? What if I just
I
copy
was gonna
paste
say,
yours?
I was gonna say, you could totally do that. And you can say like, read this uh, delegate profile, and then it will know about that delegate profile. And then you can say like, how does Chris feel about public goods? And it can tell you that. Or you can say, okay, now write my version of this. I don't know what prompt will actually work, but it'll be something like that, which is like, okay, great. Use that as the outline to write my delegate profile. And that's basically, it's just kind of a dialogue back and forth with the machine. Where it's really not like the machine does all the work. It's like you're just trying to coax it to give you the info you want. Then, by the way, once you have this, this is persistent, right? This delegate to Carnegie on the left side is persistent. And then, when you write your vote with reason, you can like write it in your own words, and then it can rewrite it in the way that this delegate would talk. And so you can have like this consistent voice with it, which is not how I use it, but I think about that a little bit. But I can never really triangulate the people that I would want this voice to be. And so it's kind of just my voice, and then, it just rewrites versions of it.
But that's interesting. Like theoretically, you could feed an LLM like all of Vitalik's writing, and then
Definitely
say, be my delegate and write his own Vitalik.
Yeah, in fact, Vitalik, it probably has a lot of writing from. You could probably say write this as Vitalik, like Vitalik, but you typically can't just feed it kind of all of the stuff. What I wonder is like, in my general, like I want to build this huge repository of knowledge, and then of nouns knowledge, and then like feed it a prop and have it predict whether that prop is going to pass or fail. And then I have no idea. It's like my experiment. I have no idea if that will be successful. I think there are parts I think it will work sometimes, or a lot of the other things. There's House of Nouns has a podcast where they talk about the props that are on chain, and they'll often compare it to like the last one who asked for 150 ETH was this prop, and here's the thing, or it's like, oh, this is kind of similar to prop 65 in these types of ways. And so I was always interested in that, which is like, okay, new prop comes on chain, show me all the props that this is similar to, in whatever sort of vectors that it thinks it's similar. So that would be one interesting one. But yeah, I'm super interested in knowing if it could like start to predict success based on sort of themes in the prop or however, and then then fast forward a bunch, and it's like you have a full member of your DAO that is just next step would be like, cool, now the DAO ChatGPT is just a member of the DAO, has a noun, does its own voting, writes its own vote with reason. Just sort of.
I mean, are you convinced that we don't have that already?
No, I'm not convinced that at all. I would guess that I would think that there's a human making the yes/no decision right now, but maybe all of the writing and persona and everything is AI. I'm not sure. It's totally possible. So it may exist. But I haven't known a lot about AI pod. Also, that's like one of my weaknesses in nouns, especially because I actually do love AI. Make a lot of art with AI and all that stuff. The stuff I've seen from it is art related, which is really cool. But yeah, I think there's like a lot of people in the DAO, greater DAO space, thinking about how AIs interact with DAOs and change them in what ways. So like it's just an interesting. It's like I'm in DAOs because I like the people. That's like that's like humans coordinating around a shared mission. So that's super interesting to me. But it's like you also can't have a blind spot of like, well, could these things actually be truly automated? Could my AI know what I'm going to say and vote and just do it for me?
Have you seen Roko.dev, Chris?
No, this is great. The summary.
The goal here is summaries. Yeah, but I've had Shep
seen the
and
audio.
Ant on.
Yeah, I have seen the audio, which I think is really great. The summaries are cool. And like another use case I tried with ChatGPT was like, okay, great, grab the proposal, run it through ChatGPT. And it's like, it compresses it so much that you lose any sort of nuance. And like, you can't use the summary to make a voting decision. because it like compresses it so far down that like you lose a lot of the nuance of what is trying to happen. But I do like it for recall. It's like, oh, what was this prop? And very quickly remembering. And then the audio stuff is great. I'm like super in on that. Because, you know, I think a lot of the information around props gets passed through these kind of Twitter spaces. And, you know, sometimes I'm lucky enough to be able to join them. A lot of times I'm not. And so it's like, I don't really know a lot about this prop. I know there was a town hall about it, and I don't really have time to, I wasn't there, you know, I had a work meeting, so I couldn't be there. It's often hard to like, was it recorded? Yeah, Twitter space is kind of a mess. It's like, oh, this one wasn't recorded because there was a bug or something. And so I always feel like it would be easier if people just had, rather than going on like 20 Twitter spaces, if there was like a single video that or audio that like everyone watched and passed around, you know.
Yeah. Hey, we've got just a couple more minutes here. Do you want to talk about Builder or anything on your mind that we haven't covered, Chris?
Yeah, I would love to just talk about Builder, and then more maybe in the abstract Builder DAOs. I don't really have a ton to say about Builder DAO itself, but I do have all these people who want to build one of these DAOs, and so you know, that answers a lot of questions. And so you have my tweets up before, which is just like I think captured a bunch of like the misconceptions and the things that go down in my DMs or calls. And yeah, I think it would be cool to speak to some of those. Yeah, this one here. You know, I know you like the last part of this tweet. Let's see, what was the first part of the tweet? Yeah, okay, cool. So I think you know, people kind of see the nouns model. Some people see the nouns model as like this like magic wand that's gonna like just work. You know, it's like, oh, I got this idea, and then you know, I think I used the example somewhere in here. It's like, I got this idea, everyone can own a color. Every day it's gonna be a different color and you can buy that color. And I've talked to a bunch of my friends and everyone wants a color and this is gonna be really great, you know. And my thought is like, but why? This is like an NFT project you're describing to me. So what are you guys gonna do with the shared treasury? And then I'll just branch and say, there are some people who are actually NFT artists, and I have to tell them like, hey, you get none of this money. All of that money goes to the treasury. Then the DAO needs to vote to give you that money. And so that like probably 50% of my conversations just stop right there. You know, it's like people don't, that's like how fundamental the misunderstanding of nouns is that NFT artists are like, cool, I'm gonna do the daily auction. I'm gonna get all the money. I'm gonna get rich. It's like, well, nope, that's not really how this works, you know? And if that's your goal, which is cool, if that's, you know, you have your own commercial goals, like this is not the right thing for you, and check out XYZ, you know? So that's number one. But then the second part is like, the people do understand that. It's like, we're all going to buy a color, and then there's going to be this great shared treasury. And it's like, yeah, but you're all interested in colors, so what are you going to do with this shared treasury? And, yeah, then the next counter is always like, well, the community will define what we're going to do with this treasury. And it's like, yeah, that is true. But like without any guidance, nothing's going to happen, and you're not going to know what you're signing up for, and people aren't going to buy the color to join a DAO with a treasury that has no real goal or mission. And so I often think this is kind of like the first early part of the coaching, which is like, here's the deal: we're building an organization. It's not an NFT project. The color thing is cool, but like maybe you're like raising money for the, you know, like accessibility tools because colorblind people can't see all these colors or something. I mean, like some kind of core mission that people want to join, and so that's always like what I think is really what you're building here is like join a mission. So if you're going to launch one of these DAOs, like have a clear mission in mind. It is a decentralized organization. As the founder, you have very little say on what happens once this thing launches. But before it launches, you can like kind of set the direction and say like, hey, do you want to join this thing? Do you love Farcaster and want to fund these developers who are working for free? Like, join this DAO. That's what we're going to do. And so I always say, like, I think one of the previous times I was on here, it's like, I always think like nouns, and you can be like, well, what is the goal of nouns? And it's like to proliferate the meme. And it's like the perfect level of mission and vagueness. And then it takes a lot of mental gymnastics and thoughts to like really understand what you think proliferate the meme is. But it's like, you sort of know it is, right? It's not like, let's all go on vacation in the Bahamas and do like a corporate retreat, right? Like that's like not what you're signing up for. So yeah, this is from the last time I was on talking about purple. But so that to me is like just one of the common misconceptions is like have a really strong, and there's a lot. If you go to nouns.build and you just look at the list, there's just so many on there that are not succeeding, and there's a short handful that have some level of traction. And I think that's just generally normal. It's like most startups go to business, like most ideas fail. But part of it is just like a lot of it just wasn't thought through very well, and there was no kind of core unifying mission. And so I think my last tweet was like a lot of people think the thing is the daily auction, and it's like that NFT mentality, or it's just kind of the crypto mentality. That's like, wow, this works because it's a daily auction and there's scarcity and people bid on it and the prices go up. And like that's none of the reason of why this thing is working. It's because there's some organization with a mission that people want to join, and this is how they join that mission. And so that's kind of a lot of like what I come back to. This sort of Twitter thread here is a lot of what I come back to when a certain type of person who contacts me and is like a little bit misguided. Now, a lot of people take this feedback and they're like, ah, cool, I get it. Like, I got it now. I'll come back to you in 2 weeks with refined ideas, Or a lot of people decide like, oh, this isn't really for me. And then there's some people who are like, nah, whatever. None of that matters. We're just going to go for it. So I get all of the above. But that's like just a common conversation I'm having with people, again, who are not particularly nounish. Like nounish people kind of know these things, and their questions and focuses are different. But the one thing I learned, and like, you're in your own little filter bubble, so this was surprising to me, is just like how few people still inside of crypto know how nouns works. And so nouns build is cool and builder DAO is cool, and it's starting to like proliferate the nounish DAO, but there's a real lack of understanding and education of what this stuff means and what it takes to like be successful, and why people might be interested in it. And like I think nouns is actually getting better at doing that for themselves, but for like the larger ecosystem, it's like you're some creative project and you want to fund artists, you heard about this nouns build thing, and it's like, but you haven't really, there's nowhere to even go to learn all of the resources, like what would it mean to build an artist ecosystem DAO in a nounish way.
That's a really great way to kind of lead me into this sort of, I think, the final question, because we talked about this before, but this is the about statement of Purple DAO: to proliferate and expand the Farcaster protocol and ecosystem. And I think you can probably tell a lot about whether a DAO is going to work based on how far this about statement deviates. And so I guess that's sort of my question, is how far can a nounish DAO deviate from this kind of formula, do you think, and still be successful, if at all?
This like proliferate and expand the X protocol, or the X
Y, Z, plug in whatever.
X, Y, Z. Yeah.
Plug in whatever you want.
I think it can. I don't think this sentence in this formula is the important thing. I kind of stole this from nouns, right? And plugged in my info. But I think I think what needs to happen is some very clear mission that you're signing up for. And there's probably a lot of different ways to say that, and different communities probably want to say it in different ways. I'll give one example is Refraction DAO is an art DAO. It's like a creative DAO. It's like FWB, but a little bit more about artists. And they have their own treasury, and they put all kinds of cool events, and they fund people to throw gallery events, and they fund artists, and they do all this cool stuff around artists. And they have a core treasury, right? And it's like a lot of this stuff is just a pure drain on the treasury. And they don't necessarily, I don't know how Refraction is set up, but a lot of these DAOs don't necessarily have a way to replenish the treasury. And so it's like maybe you start the year with $1 million, and then you end the year with like $100,000, and you have to think about doing things differently. But one of the things, like, they have a group of people who are passionate about funding small grants for artists in this community. And so I've been working with them to like set up I should say they took all of the initiative. They're doing it all themselves. Like I just provided a little bit of guidance, but they are going to do like an artist ecosystem DAO, like a Refraction artist ecosystem DAO. And I don't know what their message will be. I bet it's not to proliferate and expand the Refraction artist ecosystem DAO, but that is sort of what they're building, which is like, well, we just want to like the community members themselves want to pool capital and then fund a bunch of the community members. And I think it's totally going to work. It's like they have everything they need. They have artists who are great. They've had funding from the mothership that has been really successful. The artists have had success. They have a user base that is passionate about supporting these people and will support them with their money. And so it just kind of makes such good sense to me that they want to do it through Prophouse, right? And so it makes sense to me that they're going to have a token of some kind. I guess it'll be some beautiful artwork, and people will buy at daily auction, and you know that money is going to be supporting some of the artists in your community. And so it winds up just being like a very clear mission. You know exactly what you're paying for. And then it winds up being this self-sustaining model of being able to give small grants to the artists. The main treasury doesn't have to do small grants to the artists anymore. It can focus on the other activities it does. And you wind up with like an ecosystem DAO around these artists. And so in some ways, maybe that's very similar to Purple in the fact that Purple is a protocol ecosystem DAO. And this is kind of like an art community ecosystem DAO. And I'm like a big believer in the ecosystem DAO. But it's like, I'll just say that their messaging will probably be vastly very different. And my guess would be like not familiar to like it wouldn't. I don't think it will be very Namish because they have their own brand and behavior and voice and all of that stuff. So their description will not be in this formula, but maybe it's like maybe ultimately it could be, and that's the question you're asking is like, does it need to be something like this to succeed? Yeah, I just think it needs to have a very very clear mission. And people want to join that mission. And then we've talked about the flywheel before, and then you start to make progress towards that vision and mission, and more people want to join because they see you doing that. I've been thinking about like more abstract, like if you were really into cleaning up the ocean, there's probably tons of different initiatives someone can do. And you might join a DAO, a Namish DAO that was like, first of all, that you believed could actually do this, but then also was working on a thing that like you care a lot about. I think like because nouns is so playful and in some ways so meta, the thing is about itself, like very recursive in that way. I think it like leads people to believe that like you don't really need a mission, you just need cute art. You're just building a community, and but actually now sort of nailed in its recursive way, nailed the mission. And I just think it's super important. And if you look at all these things like the park, have a strong community and mission around a particular band. Yeah, I just think that's like the key thing. And so anyway, so I hear a lot of good things that I am excited about. Like, oh, that's such a good creative idea. And then under deeper scrutiny, I'm like, but I don't think I would sign up for this thing because I don't want to be a part of this kind of nebulous community that doesn't really know what it wants to be on day one.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. Chris, thanks so much for coming on. We're going to turn this into a regular thing. Probably have you on in 2 weeks again. Same kind of time slot. We're also in talks of doing a much more fun sort of live stream with a third person who's got some things to say about Purple. That's coming up hopefully in May, right?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, awesome. The one thing that I didn't get into, which maybe we'll get onto in that one, is I'll just give you the quick highlight here, which is like then you get in these builder DAOs, and like a lot of people have this like institutional knowledge of like the last DAO they came from, and they just want to like they think they are the team, right? And it's like no, we fund the teams, and so things will be like we need a podcast. Purple should have a podcast. And I'm like no, Purple should fund the podcast. It's like we have no operational capacity. None of these DAOs have operational capacity unless you bring someone on as like an entrepreneur resident. And so that's like in this way, I'm becoming like this decentralized maxi. And I think we have a really deep conversation on that, especially with someone who I think feels the opposite way.
Yeah, that's another one to come. Well, thanks so much, Chris. Again, anyone who wants to follow Chris at @ccarella, Chris very open. Hit him up in his DMs. He's a nouns voter. So feel free to hit him up, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks again, Chris.
All right, guys. Catch you later.